What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Dobbs, and today we are joined by the incredible Brittany Viola. Brittany is an Olympian, an NCAA champion, an entrepreneur, a wife, a mother, a full-time ministry leader, and so much more. In fact, she's also a University of Miami Hall of Famer. Go Canes. But guys, Brittany is absolutely incredible, and so is her story. Today on the podcast, we're so happy to have her share so much about her life from day one until today as a full-time ministry leader, serving athletes in action and serving the next generation in ministry, guys. Brittany has been a mother, a mentor, a best friend, and so much more to me. So I'm honored to have her wisdom today on the podcast. She speaks today on her story, dealing with so much through her life and through athletics, but specifically about finding identity outside your sport. What happens when you let God write your story? And she emphasizes the play and play where your feet are. This episode is so good and I can't wait to get into it. But before we begin, let me remind you guys to make sure you are subscribed below to this podcast here on YouTube and that you're also following us on all social media platforms. We want to make sure that you guys are staying caught up, not only with the podcast, but with book content, with merch updates, and so much more, you guys. So all of those are linked below in the description. Follow those links. Find us on those social media platforms and follow us there as well. But guys, let's get into this conversation today with Brittany Viola. It's so incredible. So here is episode 6 of season 1 with Brittany Viola. This is the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast, and I'm your host, Cameron Dobbs. Brittany, welcome to the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I'm with one of my favorite people, Cameron Dobbs.
I know, and I love how we're literally down the road from each other right now, but of course we're on Zoom just because, life. But Brittany, I'm so excited that we were able to catch up a little bit before this, and we're just able to laugh and smile again together. And if anyone knows you, you know that whenever you're with Brittany, you are always smiling because your smile is contagious and your laughter is contagious. And there's just no way you don't have a fun time when you're with Brittany. So I know already that this podcast is going to be a lot of fun. I know it's also going to be packed with wisdom, and it's also going to be packed with an incredible, impactful story. So Brittany, I just want to thank you for coming on the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast today. It's going to be great. And we are so excited to have you.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for trusting me to be on your podcast and to have this conversation. I'm so excited.
Yes, of course. And we were talking beforehand, before we started recording, how this was a hard podcast episode for me to prep for because Brittany, I know you so well and you know me so well. And I just want to talk about everything with you because you've been these past 4 years at Miami, and we can maybe get into more of our relationship and how it started as well. But you've really been like a mentor, you've been a mom, you've been a sister, and you've been a best friend to me from the beginning. I think probably week 1 or 2, I stepped foot on campus at we met. And ever since, it has just been us together side by side, ride or dies. And you've carried me through the good times, the bad times, all of it. And so again, this podcast could last like 7 days if we talked about everything, but we'll try to, of course, be generous of our audience here and tone it down a little bit. But I'm serious, guys, pay attention to this episode because Brittany does have an incredible story. So without further ado, let's get into it. Tell us a little bit, just start at the beginning here. Talk about growing up. Of course, you were an athlete as well. So tell me about yourself.
Yeah, well, it's so funny to meet you, Cameron. And I was a student athlete at the University of Miami. My life did not start there. I grew up in Orlando. My dad played Major League Baseball, and our family honestly moved all over for sport. I happened to get into the sport of gymnastics.
Pause there, Brittany, before you continue. Her father also is the Frank Viola. So it's not just like her dad was this casual MLB baseball player, as if that is even casual, but her dad is also the Frank Viola. So after knowing that, Brittany, continue.
Yeah, I will say the year that I was born, my dad won the World Series. So I accredit, his success with the Twins and his career after to my birth and my life, bringing joy to his life. Yeah, so our family was honestly a big sport family. I got into gymnastics, and it was one of those things that I just got into and I was really good at. And I didn't honestly dabble in too many other sports. I settled into gymnastics and started progressing in the levels. And by age 11 was one of the top gymnasts at the highest level of the sport and had Olympic hopes to go to it was at the time, Greece, because I would be 17 years old. And in gymnastics, you had to be at least 16 to go to the Olympics.
That's wild. I mean, and this is way back. You weren't even close to that age yet, though. You were still young and training, and you were already seen as this incredible athlete who was going to do big things. And you did do big things, but we'll get to that more. So you start as a gymnast and you're killing it in every single way possible. But gymnastics isn't what you ended up doing, and you weren't ending up to be a gymnast. So talk to me, what happened next? Why are you not Brittany Viola Gonzalez, the gymnast? Why are you Brittany Viola Gonzalez, the diver? Tell me that story.
Yeah. So gymnastics, honestly, to this day, it's still one of my favorite sports. However, at the time, a lot of my time went to gymnastics, and there were some really tough moments. And as a little girl, I didn't know how to have those it felt like conversations I felt like I needed to have. And I remember at certain points wanting to quit. And ultimately it led to me quitting the sport at age 13, feeling like it turned more into a job than something that I was enjoying. And as I was not doing a sport and playing around at PE, which I usually got to skip because of gymnastics, I was doing old gymnastics moves on a 1 meter diving board, a springboard, and the swim coach had seen me, and I was just playing around doing my thing, but my thing was not what other people did. I did like double flips, these twists, and everything onto my feet though. And the swim coach asked me if I wanted to join the diving team. And I didn't know diving was a sport, but I was like, I'm not doing anything, so sure. And just within that month, I met an Olympic diving coach, and within the year represented the US at the junior level in Mexico and won a medal. So I couldn't believe how fast my life changed from sports. And then also just, I was on track to go to the Olympics again.
It's so wild to me. I mean, I've heard this story probably, I don't know, 10 times at least 10 times. And of course, I've told other people this story many, many times as well, just introducing who you are. And it gets me every time because you are just so incredible. And I think it's just crazy how you pick up one thing after another. And talking about playing where your feet are, you do gymnastics and you're in the arena of being a gymnast, and you play where your feet are and you are incredible at it. Now, of course, you have some God-given abilities of being a great athlete, I would say, but you were just so driven. And then you give up gymnastics and then you move to diving. And here you are again, giving your all, playing where your feet are, and being an Olympic hopeful once again, now in the diving arena. And so you are just so incredible in every way, shape, or form. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of your story and just the tip of the iceberg of the human you are. So guys, I'm telling you, hold on, because it just keeps on getting better and better and better. So you are what, like 14, 15 years old now? You just won that competition, like you won a medal. You are probably world renowned now because that was worlds. And I'm assuming you're getting ready to maybe start looking at colleges, looking forward to continuing your diving career. Talk to me, what was next for you?
Yeah, well, it's funny, I had 2004 Olympics in Greece in my heart and mind for gymnastics. But what was so sweet was that I actually got to go to that same Olympic trials for diving. 17 years old, had the meet of my life. I was seriously on cloud 9, and I placed second in the United States. And this was any other year, I would have gone to the Olympics. But this year, specifically, they had changed the rules. And so second place didn't get me there. But I have to tell you, I just had fun, and I knew I did the best that I could. I had nothing to leave behind, like didn't leave anything on the court or at the pool.
No, that's so incredible. And just, again, the drive you have to just do everything with the best of your ability. And so you're now 17. You are continuing to be fantastic of an athlete. And you just killed it at the Olympic trials. And then now next step is college. And of course, this is kind of where, we don't meet each other yet, of course, but this is where we eventually get connected, is at none other than the University of Miami. Go Canes, baby. So Brittany, you came to UM. Tell me just about the journey getting there and what your collegiate career was like.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting, my coming to college, because I was looking at, I had a lot of colleges wanting me to sign with
them. Obviously.
And University of Miami was one of them. However, when I graduated high school, I wanted to take a year off to see where I could take my athletic career without the pressures of academics. And so I actually took that year, worked, and kept continuing to train. And it was that year that it started to reveal something that was going on a lot deeper. And so you talked about Cameron, this is the surface of like gymnast, diver, incredible, top in her sports. And then, to go a little bit deeper, the stuff that people don't see was that, Brittany was struggling, that there were things going on under the surface in my home, in my heart, in my mind, that was unseen to the world around me. And so during my high school years, I had developed what I now can identify as an eating disorder. And it progressively got worse. And this year that I took off before going to college was the worst it had ever gotten. It started making its way into the pool, into my diving. And I had already been seeing a nutritionist, a psychologist, and it wasn't getting any better. If anything, I felt like I had lost control. Like my behaviors were outside of my management, and that scared the crap out of me. And so I talked to my mom and asked, I told her I need some more help. And we started researching inpatient eating disorder facilities. And I happened to go to this facility in Arizona called Remuda Ranch. And this was February to April. And I started school at the University of Miami in May for summer session 1, or I don't know what it's called now. And so I was coming in with a lot more than just my athletic career and academics. So that was the way that I came into the University of Miami. My freshman year was super tough, managing that change, leaving family, struggling still with food and body image, relationships. And so my freshman year was tough. It was a little bit embarrassing. Honestly, I knew that I had more in me athletically. I placed 4th at NCAAs, which maybe for some would have been like, wow, that's really good. But for me, I was like, that was not good. Like I can do a lot better. And there were some unique things that started happening my sophomore year at the University of Miami that started taking care of more of my heart and my mind, which ultimately was a relationship with the Lord. I started reading the Bible for the first time my sophomore year of college. I didn't even know what the heck was in the Bible. And there were just some things I started learning that changed ultimately me from the inside out. The relationships that I had started changing, and my athletic career started changing. My sophomore year, I won my first NCAA championship. And it was just so cool to not only accomplish what I had come to the University of Miami to do, and to do it already by year 2, but it was just so cool to just be able to do what I loved, and then to have community behind me that was more healthy, and I was more healthy.
And talk about that too, because you mentioned, you found Christ starting in your sophomore year, started reading the Bible, started getting into a church-based community as well. And then you ended up being this NCAA champion. And I feel like a lot of people can see that and be like, okay, she read the Bible, she found Jesus, and then now she's an NCAA champion. Like, okay, sure, that's a coincidence, like that could be put on a ton of different quote unquote reasons of maybe why you won NCAAs that year and just happened to be picking up a Bible. Mm-hmm. But reflecting on that season of life for you, in what ways did you really see God truly impacting your athletic career?
Yeah, I have 2 specific ways that came to mind as you asked that question. One is I had made it to the finals, which I had already done before the year before. But I was in the bathroom, and I remember like just feeling scared, like even like trepidation, crap, like this is the finals, like here we go, I'm nervous. And I remember I called one of my best friends she had read the Bible with me, like she she was just that friend to me that I could be super real with. She didn't judge me for my struggles. Like I could be real with this woman. And I was like, I'm like freaking out, I'm like at Ohio State by myself. No one cares about the University of Miami. They don't want me to win. And I just remember I called her and I was like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. And I was just like, hey, can you pray for me? And like, I didn't even prayer is not that big of a deal to me, but it just felt like I could invite someone bigger into this arena than just me. It brought this comfort to me that I didn't get to go to in the past. Like I would never call a friend and be real first. Like who's at the top of their game and then call someone and they're like, I'm freaking out, man. Like you have to have trustworthy relationships to do that, and to have friends that you can go to that you can just be that raw with, and then they can encourage you at a place that like, it wasn't just her. Like I got to bring in the one who created me, the one who gave me the gift of diving. And then it was so cool to just go have fun, dive for him, with him. So that was a huge change, was like right before making a call. And then the second thing is that after competing, knowing that it's not just on me, like after the game finishes, it's like, oh, I won an NCAA title, but it wasn't just about me and winning an NCAA title. It was like gratitude that the Lord would let me compete at a level that I did the best that I could, and that it resulted in something that in my heart I had been desiring, but not that had to be the end result. Like I just got to go do what I love to do. So it started changing my perspective of like a praise. It wasn't just me being the best diver. I knew I had the gift to dive, and then I could give great like gratitude for that experience. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that was just like so cool to me. And it was a shift because it was all on me before. Now it became more of a communal performance.
I think that's so good. And for myself, when I was medically retiring and when I had my sport taken away from me after my concussions, for me, realizing God really being in my sport as well was a big perspective shift in terms of identity. Because for myself, I grew up a little unlike your story. I grew up a Christian my entire life, like was literally born into the church. My parents, like my grandfather was a pastor, he was a minister. Like on the other side, my mom's parents were heavily involved in church. So I was just born into the Bible Belt, living in Georgia, and had a Bible in my hand since day one. And so for me, I grew up saying all the time, I'm a child of God, I'm a child of God, I'm a child of God. But over time, I was very successful in school and in sport and just generally in life. And so when I had my sport taken away from me, and on top of my sport taken away from me, I had the organizations I was serving in taken away from me. I had my church that I was serving in taken away from me. I had all these accolades sidelined with the injury that I was facing. I had pretty much anything and everything that I had set goals toward taken away from me during that season. And for me, it was like, okay, all right, God, like I really am not Cameron Dobbs, the volleyball player anymore. I'm not Cameron Dobbs, the this, the that, the other, I have to realize that it doesn't matter. My identity is not rooted in my performance on the court, in the classroom, or in my career, but my identity is rooted in Jesus Christ. And that's something I've always really reminded myself since leaving my sport, or since leaving playing. Of course, I'm still around the sport. But since having that identity shift has really changed with seeing God in the sport as well. And so I think that having God beside you and in you as an athlete is so vital for victory. And it just gives you such a bigger step up and such an edge against other athletes. It's an even bigger advantage. I mean, we talk about too mental health, how that's just Victoria Garrick has, in fact, a company named The Hidden Opponent that talks about mental health. And that's what mental struggles are. They're the hidden opponent. And then it's like, God, he's like the secret weapon. You have the hidden opponent of mental health, but God is like the secret weapon of sport. And if you have him on your side, I think going back to that first point you said about how you were scared, you were anxious, you knew you had a big task in front of you, but you can look to God and realize, hey, it's not all on me. First off, God gives me this ability to even be able to step up and compete every single day. And secondly, at the end of the day, I'm a child of God. I'm not just a diver. I'm not just a volleyball player. I am a child of God. And whether I pass or fail, I will be fine. I will be amazing. And that title of a child of God will not change with my success. Brittany, one thing you also have told me before, and I'm probably going to totally mess up this line, but you told me something before, how I think it was when you didn't compete as well as you were hoping at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And you were really bummed about that. And you had a conversation with someone, and that person told you, I think, that your failure in life makes you a lot more relatable, something along the lines of that, than all your success you have. And that, to me, since you said that to me, even though I'm probably butchering the exact line you told me, that has also impacted me as well. And so again, talking about this whole identity in sport and identity in Christ, finding the balance between the two is so, so, so important. All right, let's get back to it though. So either you can feel free to comment on that if you'd like, or take it from there, continuing at your career at UM.
Yeah, I was just thinking to flood into that. It didn't end with an NCAA championship for the rest of my career at the University of Miami. I did have more years ahead of me.
Yeah, that was only year 2, guys. Only year 2.
Only year 2. And so once I won an NCAA title, I actually, a few months later, went to my second Olympic trials. And similarly, as in 2004, I was the alternate again. I got 3rd place, and I got an email saying, if anyone gets hurt, to go to China, you get to go. That didn't feel very good. But that was an interesting year for my life. Junior year, I didn't end up winning an NCAA. I actually had a crazy back spasm at NCAA zones that kept me from doing platform, and I was disqualified. I qualified to NCAA on another event, and then I was told at NCAAs that I could not compete in my best event. And I just did the event that I'm actually worst at. And that was an interesting moment, because there's a lot in life that's outside of our control. But this is the part where how we respond to those moments are big game changers for the rest of our lives. And so as I was learning that my identity was not in my sport, it was not a life wrecker for me. It was disappointing, but it didn't take me down. And so that was something that was really hard for me, but continuing to say, hey, let me keep moving forward in my athletic career, keep getting better, heal from what was going on in my body. And a little while later, I got to represent the United States at a world championships, where that was an amazing experience to do 2 events in Italy. Oh my goodness, what an opportunity. And I basically, at the closing ceremonies, was walking and my foot just gave out, my entire leg. And this moment led to about a year and a half out of the sport for a foot injury. So I'm at and that's the thing sometimes, is that we're like, oh, Olympics, I'm so close. I'm right there. And then life throws a curveball, and then you have an opportunity to respond a multitude of ways. And so as I was out for that year and a half, that was one of the biggest refining training moments for me. And I love this podcast with Play Where Your Feet Are, because I learned so well that I was not just an athlete. There was a moment where I had a little bit more time as I was injured, and I was volunteering at a volleyball game. And I was just helping out, I think I had a marketing class, and I was like, I just want to serve and help. And I was just learning more about what that looks like behind supporting a volleyball game. And afterwards, the senior women's administrator at the time approached me, and she asked me if I wanted to be the president of SAC, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And I remember being like, what? I was like, I'm an athlete, honestly, I was like, Brittany is an athlete. I'm not a leader of organizations. And I remember being like, oh, think about it, and in this case, I was
like, okay,
no, I don't know.
Sure.
I know. I was like, I don't even know what SAC is. What does it stand for again? And I was like, I just don't understand why, she would approach me and ask that. And so I came back to her after some time, and I was like, you know what? I'm not diving as much right now. I would love to help. And I had no clue. I had no plans. But that became one of my favorite things in my entire time at the University of Miami, which led to becoming, Cameron, this, being invited into the Iron Arrow Honor Society. Totally butchered that. I didn't even know iron arrow existed. And just the route of how my life changed. Like if I was just focused on diving in this goal in the Olympics, and I just thought settled, it's really a settling for what I think my life should be versus a curveball being thrown and taking it as a curiosity of, is there something else that I can be doing? Is there more in me? So I got to discover there's more to Brittany. There's more gifts and passions that I have than just sport. I'm good at other things. And so it was so cool to take on this leadership position and realize that I love leading. And I actually have an eye for a multitude of things and how to bring people together and strategizing and encouraging others to step into roles that maybe they don't feel qualified for yet, just as I did. So that was a really cool experience. I was out for a year and a half. And then who would have thought I go into a diving competition and I was like, I'm just going to get my feet wet. I literally won my first national championship in the United States. And then a couple months later, I won my second NCAA championship. And that is how my career ended at the University of Miami. So my journey is so, like, it's not what I would have written. And yet it's better than I could have written it.
I love that. That's so good. And I think it's so important to even highlight because you were such a high caliber athlete. And I feel like to some, it might be easy to say, oh, I'm more than an athlete, when maybe they're, not to offend anyone, of course, but maybe when they're not the top athlete. They're thinking, oh, okay, my career won't be athletics. And so I kind of have to fall back on something, So it's like, of course I'm more than an athlete because I won't be able to play this sport forever. But you, on the other hand, you really were one of the best athletes in the entire world. You were an Olympian, and that proves it just by saying that. But still, there was more to you. Your sport was not the only great thing about you. In fact, like you said, you think that curveball being thrown into your life has made you even realize your potential so much more. And I love how you said almost as if you would have never gotten hurt and you would have just stuck on the entire, Olympic path and college athlete path as you did. But if you stayed on that path, not ever getting hurt, never facing any adversity, then you said that path might have even been settling. And she's saying this again as an Olympic athlete, as an NCAA champion, that there's so much more to you, no matter how much praise you have in one area of your life, there is so much more to you. And again, it goes back to the whole identity aspect, that your identity is not rooted in your performance on the court or the classroom or in your career. Your identity is rooted in Christ. That is just so good, Brittany. And I'm not even shocked because you always bring the good wisdom and the good pieces and bits always, every single time we talk, every single time we have a conversation. So again, I'm not even shocked. But let's keep it going here. So you finish your career at the University of Miami, and what's next from there?
I graduated at the University of Miami, and I had one more year until the 2012 Olympic trials. So I decided to give it one more go around. Third Olympic trials, USA diving, here we come. And honestly, it was interesting to go into this Olympic trials because I had grown in my relationship with the Lord a lot, and I had incredible mentors. So it's so funny to be a mentor for you because I was so gifted with incredible women and men that just helped. They were my pillars that just helped me get where I was and then be sustained through all the seasons. And so I go to 2012 Olympic trials, and honestly, I had a mentor who just laid out before me. Like, I remember telling her, I just felt very scared again. This was third go around. A lot of people already knew I was one of the favorites to go to the Olympics. And I laid out worst case scenario. She was like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And I was like, probably smacking or failing every dive or hitting my head on the platform. Just embarrassing myself, like worst performance I've ever had, or hurting myself like right before. And then she was like, what about the best case scenario? What's the best case scenario? So I played that out, that I did the best I've ever done, and I qualify for the Olympics, and I get to go represent the US in London. And there was something about those two questions that allowed me to hold these like rich depths of like perspectives and realities, and that it could have fallen anywhere in between. And so as I went into the Olympic trials, I was at peace, and I was like, you know what? I am more than my performance. And I knew there would be a life after sport. So if I smacked on every dive and hurt myself, like I knew God's hand would be there, that he would have this plan, he would heal me, that he would do something crazy that like I wouldn't even think of. And so it was like, okay, like I could actually live with that. Like that would be terrible, but I mean, my life will go on. And then like best case scenario, I was like, okay, that I could also see that happen. And so just being able to hold the results of my performance with open hands, I honestly got to go and just have fun. And it was amazing. I had the best performance of my entire athletic career at the Olympic trials. I think on my first dive, I got 10s and just played it out. I was seriously shocked though. I was like, Lord, you're just too good. Like I'm just
Ephesians 3:20. Ephesians 3:20, baby. Ephesians 3:20.
So it was just fantastic. I didn't have to do my last dive. I had made the Olympic team, door open for me to go to London, and I got to represent not only the United States, but Jesus Christ at the Olympics, and be able to know that it wasn't just to even go for a medal and to go to the Olympics, but who could I love? Who could I serve? Like what other ways would he use me besides just practicing and performing? And what was so cool, Olympics end, and that's when my husband proposed at the Olympics right before closing ceremony. I literally got 2 rings in one day, an Olympic ring, and then the engagement ring. And I was just ecstatic. I couldn't have written this story. It's just been so beautiful. The highs and the lows are all beautiful to me.
I love that. Literally hashtag proposal goals, because I mean, seriously, could you even imagine? But Brittany, again, your story is incredible, and just the success you've had mixed with the adversity you've faced, how you have played where your feet are, how you have faced that adversity, how have you continued to persevere and just push against all odds and be the great human being that you are. Not just the great athlete you are, but the great human being you are, again, is so inspirational. And I love the thing about you is because, which we mentioned this early on, how I didn't know you as a diver. I didn't know you as the Brittany Viola. You know, I know you as Brittany Gonzalez. I didn't know even Viola was your maiden name for like probably a year at least. But again, you are just an incredible person off or outside of the pool as well. And you knew that. You mentioned how you knew that when your sport ended, there was going to be a life after sport for you. And even if you ended on a high note at the Olympics, wearing an Olympic ring and an engagement ring, you still had more to your life. And you're living through that right now. You now have a little family of your own. You have your 3 little munchkins that I love oh so much. We were just talking about them before the podcast started. And then Brownie, your 4th child that we always joke about, her dog. And Anthony, of course, your husband, you mentioned. And now you're in a role where you are still playing where your feet are, even when you're not playing at all. So talk to me now. What are you doing? How are you still impacting the sports industry, even though you're not necessarily a quote unquote athlete inside of it anymore?
Yeah. Life has dramatically changed. And then at the same time, not too much has changed, because I get to continue to work in athletics through Athletes in Action, where we talk about faith, life, and sport. How do they come together? And I honestly just get to walk alongside incredible women and men who are using the gifts that they've been given and they've been planted at the University of Miami and other campuses in South Florida. So it's an honor to serve students just like you, Cam, who come in and you're just trying to figure it out. And if there's any way that I can give lift to your life, hope to your life, so that you can claim those goals and dreams that you're going after, but even those goals and dreams that God has for you, that's even more exciting for me. And so it just feels like an honor and a privilege to be allowed to move into those places. So ever since the Olympics, I came on staff with Athletes in Action, and I've been serving here in South Florida since then. And so it's been 9 years, and that has just been so cool. Such a surprise. I got to go to the pool actually just this week and visit my coach, my assistant coach, the swim coach, and just be present. There was an athlete that was actually, I didn't know if they were serving the team or an athlete, and I just was able to stand alongside them, introduce myself, and we got into a conversation, and it was just such a pleasure. This student is actually injured right now, fluke, weird foot thing, And she just kept asking me questions, and she just, you could tell, got a lot of encouragement from it, because she was like, hey, when do you do that meeting with the girls? And was interested in coming, and yet didn't have any sort of faith background. And like, I didn't either when I came into this, relationship with the Lord. And so it's just really special to be able to do what I get to do now, to get to enjoy how God works now in other athletes' lives while he's simultaneously working in my own and my kids and my husband, which I think when you mentioned play where your feet are, one of the things that was so interesting is how having kids was not something that I was like, man, I've been dreaming about this my whole life. Like, I've been dreaming about the Olympics. I haven't been dreaming about kids.
You haven't had time to dream about that.
Like, taking care of kids, what does that look like? Like, babysitting, I was like, they're so annoying. Why would I ever babysit? So I this was not the plan, but I got pregnant a month into marriage and had our son 9 months and 2 weeks after getting married. And honestly, that was a very hard transition for me. I was used to playing hard towards the goals that I had set. And it was very hard to play where my feet were. And I felt like that word play has been like a mantra for my life since having kids, as if I get an invitation to play in a way that I couldn't as a gymnast, where it turned into a job, that I, as an adult, can step into play with my children. Honestly, I get to choose it for the rest of my life if I want to. And so to see my kids not as a burden or in the way of my now other goals and dreams that I have that are even beyond athletes in action, but I get an opportunity to play, that there's beauty in having my children. And like, when I get to see that, when I see them dance, I went to the Trader Joe's the other day, and Micah, my 7-year-old son, just started moving his body like all over the aisles, in and out. Like, he was hitting people's carts, like so zoned in on the joy of listening to the music and it flow out of his body. And I literally started copying him at one point, because I was just so fascinated by how much fun he was having. So anyway, that is the opportunity. I feel like this is when I think about play where your feet are, and what that means. What I think it means is, I feel like it's like one of the big words is opportunity. Sometimes like the play where your feet are can be like, oh, you're kind of in a crappy situation. Or, you're just grounded where you are, as if you're like stuck. That's where, that perspective change. And I feel like the Lord helps me with this, because I can't get there on my own to see things from different perspectives, but it is an opportunity to play where our feet are. We're not just happenstake planted, boom, like this is, oh, that's so weird. That curveball came. Like, he knew he's got the plan in his hands. And as those things come, to be able to trust and say like, hey, what can I do? Even if it's sit on my butt and just enjoy watching my children, if it's getting to serve, take a step to do something I haven't done before. I just feel like it's such an opportunity. Yeah.
So good. And I think you did such a great job emphasizing that play aspect of the phrase, of the wisdom, of the encouragement, of the advice. But also, one thing that I also see in you, that I've seen in you just as you've loved and lived and led throughout these past 4 years, is the emphasis too on where your feet are. And you mentioned it a little bit, just about opportunity and being present. We talked about being present too. And it was you standing at that pool with that athlete next to you, and you were just present in the moment. You could have probably ignored her and watched practice, and that would have been totally fine. You were focused on practice. You were focused on looking at the other divers and the other swimmers, but you took that opportunity, going back to that word, and you were present in the moment and talked with her and learned about her, and were able to make an impact on her, because you told us that she was then asking, when can I get more connected? How can I get more connected? How can I find that other group of women that I can lead and serve with and learn with as well? And one of the greatest moments that we talk about in our relationship a lot is also going back to the very first time we ever hung out. And you picked me up from the dorms, from the freshman dorms. You picked me up. We got in the car. It was you, Anthony, and I, and we went to Whip and Dip. And that's a local ice cream shop here in Miami, for those of you who don't know Whip and Dip and aren't in the area. But we went to Whip and Dip, but there was a catch, because I believe at the time, I think it was Kyla sleeping in the car, question mark. But little baby Kyla, maybe even Micah too, I think they might have both been sleeping in the car. And so again, taking this opportunity to be present, we go to Whip and Dip, we run in, get our ice cream orders real quick, and then we proceed to go back to the car and stay in the car for the next like 3 hours, talking to each other, sharing testimonies, learning about each other, like super in-depth conversations with each other just about life and Christ and sport and so many different things outside of it. And I think that goes to the whole where your feet are concept of it as well, because you're taking the opportunity of, okay, I have 2 kids right now that are sleeping, and Lord knows I'm not going to wake them up. I have this girl though at that I want to get to know further. And so I'm still going to make time to go find her and be present with her, but I have to manage these at the same time. And so I'm going to combine everything, and wherever my feet are, I'm going to be present. I'm going to take the opportunity. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to learn. And so again, I think you do a great job at the entire thing, because you are so playful with life, but also you are so present in life as well. So thank you for just being a great example of playing where your feet are, because you do it so well. And because you do it so well and you are such a great example, a lot of people look up to you. A lot of people look up to you as, again, going back to your background in athletics, as Brittany the diver, as Brittany the athlete, as Brittany the leader of SAC, as Brittany the Iron Arrow tribe member, as Brittany the mom, as Brittany the small group leader. So many people look up to you as a role model for so many different reasons. And so in that, you are playing where your feet are with each and every role. So what advice do you have for others, in addition to taking that opportunity and being present and always remembering to play? What other advice do you have for others who are trying to play where their feet are?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If I had to give advice about play where your feet are, or just encouragement maybe of playing where our feet are, not only seeing it as an opportunity and getting a little maybe creative and spontaneous with whatever situation you're in and you're being faced with, but one of the big words is probably acceptance. Is if I were striving to play where my feet are, as I still am, it's accepting the reality of where I am, like the situation itself, right? I'm injured. Can't control that. I can't heal myself. How I feel, like, think this sucks. I feel really sad. I feel angry, confused why it might have happened. So that's probably one of the sweet spots for me of playing where your feet are, is accepting whatever that current reality is, the situation itself, but also the internal reality, and going on an adventure with that. And I wouldn't do it alone. I'd do it in community. So that's, if you're trying to play where your feet are and do it by yourself, you can play by yourself. It's just a lot more fun with others.
I love that. That's so good. That's so good. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to quote that, snip that little piece right there, throw that up on Instagram somehow, some way, because that was so good, and could not have said it better myself, and probably could not have said it myself anyway, because again, that is just the wisdom of Brittany Gonzalez right then and there. But Brittany, that was seriously incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. Great advice. I hope that our listeners were taking notes and jotting things down, because that seriously was incredible. Any other last words you want to add just to playing where your feet are, your story, anything about athletes in action? Any other last words?
Honestly, Cam, it's just really fun when you play where your feet are. So I had this memory as you were talking about getting ice cream together, which is one of our favorite connections, is ice cream shops. And lately it's been Jeremiah's. So shout out. We want to reopen one right here in
Fun fact, I found out today that they're opening one in Miami Beach. North Miami Beach is opening Jeremiah's. So we're putting that on the calendar and we're going as soon as possible.
So besides ice cream with Cameron and playing where my feet are, having kids, it is tricky. And that's why I mentioned creativity and spontaneity. I went to a park with Cameron one day and I had a couple of my children who just were playing. They're not in school. This is over COVID season. And Cameron just met me there to do a workout together. We got to do an outdoor workout at the park. So we got to spend time together, but my kids got to have fun and climb on Cameron and make our workout a little bit harder.
Yes.
So that was one thing that came to mind. And then it's just been so fun. You know, some of those curveballs and things in life that we see as an interruption can turn into such an opportunity, just like playing where our feet are. And during COVID, a lot of people experience just dread and like everything shut down, and therefore like their life shut down, just movement forward shut down. Honestly, that was one of my like most surprising years as last October, it's almost been a year now, where I just had this thought come to mind to create a card game and eventually a board game. And this game is called Ferret Flush. And I am so excited to share it as we have our pilot decks that are being shared right now and played. But it's basically you're faced with situations and you go through thought, feelings, and actions, and you have to win 2 out of the 3, just like a volleyball game in some settings, some best of 5. So best of 3, and you know, it's just been so fun to dig a little deeper and to develop this community. And so hopefully it's been cool that that's actually a form of play that showed up in my life, is that I can play, but also progress in my life. And it just may not look the way that I think. So I'm so excited for this podcast and listeners being blessed. And I'm excited to hear the stories of how others experience the joy and the surprises of playing where their feet are.
Most definitely. And guys, we're going to have to make sure we put all that info on Ferret Flush below, whether it's out by the time we have this podcast or where you can find it, or even just a little blurb about it, because it is so much fun. I played with Brittany several times and it's been so cool just to walk with you as you've developed this game from little cards that you just wrote on yourself to now having a full card deck that is completely designed and beautifully designed. It's been so cool to watch the whole process. So I am so excited for you. You guys will have to play Ferret Flush when it comes out. Again, I'll make sure that whether it's a link or whether it's a sentence or whatever it may be, we'll put it in the podcast description so you guys can make sure you follow up with that and play it if you're interested as well. And Brittany, how else can they stay connected with you? You know, if anyone was impacted by your story and maybe wants to actually get connected with you, what do you recommend them doing to reach out?
That is a great question. I would say I don't use my Instagram very often, but that may be the best route to publicly share. And so my Instagram handle is Brittany Viola Gonzalez. And so anyone can find me there and at least DM me through it. If you ever want to just email me directly, you can reach me at brittany.gonzalez@athletesinaction.org. So I would say those are the 2 ways.
Amazing. Again, we'll put both of those information below as well, so you guys can follow up with Brittany if you feel led to do so. I recommend anyone and everyone listening to this episode to follow up with Brittany, because she seriously is, going back to what I said at the beginning, she has been a sister to me. She has been a mentor to me, a best friend to me, a mom to me, a source of wisdom, anything and everything good. Go down the list. And Brittany has been that for me these past 4 years as I've lived in Miami. But Brittany, thank you so much again for being on the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. I think we had some fun playing where our feet are during this podcast as well. I know I was smiling a lot and laughing a lot. You always bring the awesome energy. So thank you again. Any final words as we end out the podcast?
Play where your feet are.
Play where your feet are. I love it.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you so much, Brittany. This was awesome. You guys check out more about Brittany, all linked below. We'll stay in touch with her, maybe bring her back on for another episode. Who knows? But in the meantime, guys, keep following us on Instagram. See all things PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are. And stay tuned for the next episode. Bye, guys. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in to another episode of the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast here on YouTube and also following us on all social media platforms so you can stay up to date with all of our episodes and everything going on with PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are. In addition, we also make sure to link everything for Brittany below as well so you can find her on social media, Follow all the great things she's doing, whether it's her family or Athletes in Action, or of course, Ferret Flush. She mentioned Ferret Flush in the episode, and y'all, it is now officially out to order, so you can buy that card game today. It's so much fun, and I cannot recommend it more or enough for you guys to check it out. And I know you guys are watching here on YouTube. Thank you, by the way. But a reminder that you can also listen to the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast on all podcasting platforms. Check us out there as well if you want to listen to these episodes. But guys, thanks again for listening to the PWYFA Play Where Your Feet Are podcast. We loved having Brittany on and can't wait for you guys to hear the next episode. Till then, be blessed and play where your feet are.